I know it's been a while since I've played, but I gotta say, this RS3 event, honestly, was pretty well done. What is up, guys? I am Joseph, this is Joseph's Place, and welcome to your biannual RuneScape video. I know I don't play, or haven't been playing a whole lot, but I have been getting back into it a little bit, and I kind of just wanted to make a video to talk about some recent updates that I just wanted to share my opinion on. I did something similar with raids, and I kind of wanted to do the same about the Inferno, since it was released recently, and I have some opinions on it, and I want to talk about it. It's really all the reasoning I got, so let's get into it. So first off, again, very solid update, but there were some negatives, I would say, in my opinion. The first being that this wasn't gated content at all. And this is kind of the main thing I want to hit on with the negatives. There were no quest updates at all. There were no quests released with this game. And anyone who knows me knows I hate quests, but it's kind of a trend that I've been noticing with their updates. And I mean, I give the team a lot of credit. There's not really a big team. There's only a few of them, and it's hard for them to release content that involves lore, because not only do you have the mechanics to deal with, but also the story aspect. So there's a lot more that goes into it. But still, I think there's a big missed opportunity there, just in terms of content that could come out. I do understand where, I mean, I would imagine they're coming from, in that making the Inferno as it was a lot more content than a quest. With a quest, you get a one-time 2-hour piece of content at best. 2 to 3 hours of one-time content. In the Inferno, you have repeatable content that it's even just to finish it once is a mass amount of time. So content-wise, there's much more with just releasing the Inferno. However, without the quest, you really kind of box yourself into a corner, especially, I mean, the same kind of thing with raids. There was no gated content there, and I think in the long term, it's going to do more harm than good not releasing quests along with these updates, because you're missing very big potential storyline arcs and just a lot of missed opportunities. And again, everyone knows I hate quests with a passion. I don't enjoy doing them, and I just don't have fun doing them, but I do see their benefit in the game as a whole. And I think this was probably a missed opportunity, and I'm sure they realize it, and I'm sure I'm not saying anything new. But just in general, I do think that was probably a negative to this update. One more negative that I have is just its reliance on mechanics in the game that aren't documented or aren't well documented, mainly prayer flicking. I think that's something that, first off, is a glitchy mechanic. I mean, it's not an original intended use of prayer. And I think that kind of relying on that mechanic more or less boxes you into a corner of not being able to fix that or correct it. And that in and of itself isn't bad, but I think it kind of hinders people who have, I mean, I know it's a meme, but poor ping, such as Australia, where their ping is not, sub 50. Makes it very difficult to do things like that. And I know Inferno is probably possible without prey flicking, but it's much more difficult, and it puts you at a disadvantage if you can't do that, just in terms of supplies. Not even thinking about the last wave where, it's possible to prayer flick between the mage and the ranger while you're fighting the final boss. Not even thinking about that, just the supplies you save by flicking throughout the waves is immense, and not being able to flick, or not being able to have that method down because of ping or just latency in general is kind of just puts you at a disadvantage right off the bat. So that's really all I have kind of for the negatives of this update. And I do have some really great things to say about the Inferno. In general, all of the negative things that were in my mind about raids were fixed with the Inferno. Mainly the fact that it doesn't scale to the level. This is actual endgame content. This is content that almost requires you to be max, at least in combat stats, in order to complete. And it doesn't scale like raids do, to where you could be a lower level and still complete it and have this similar chance at a good reward. I think when I saw raids, I saw it more as endgame content, and after talking to people, I do think that was probably a poor direction of thought in terms of what it actually was. It isn't endgame content. The Inferno is. The Inferno requires you to be at that endgame spot, and I think more updates like this will really help the progress of RuneScape in general. I mean, it's got me back interested in the game. It just gives a new goal other than just grinding skills. And I think that's really important for this game to actually continue to grow, especially since this game is based off of a dated version of a game. And I think content like that will really help people who are getting towards that end stage of the game to continue to be interested past just grinding out 200 mils, because grinding out 200 mils is only entertaining for a select few people. And as this game, as Old School RuneScape progresses, more and more people are going to get to that stage, and having this type of content is going to help further the game and help it do better. That's my opinion anyway, and that's how I see it as someone who would like to get to that point but has never had a reason to. This is a reason to. And I don't know if it's going to keep me interested for, permanently, but it's getting me back interested, at least for right now. And we'll see how that goes with future updates and things to that effect. So I do like the fact that we do have some real end game content. And I mean, it excites me. I mean, it's something to shoot for. It's something to go for. That's not you can't do that at lower levels. Even, you have just normal Jad and you have the normal fight caves. That can be done at much lower levels than max. And I wouldn't call that end game content, but almost requiring you are requiring that to be done, plus the added difficulties really kind of secures its spot as an end game piece of content. And I think that's great for the game, and I think more updates like this are very beneficial. I like the fact that at least this update is geared towards solo content. In my opinion, that's where end game Old School RuneScape kind of leans itself towards, is solo content, more or less. Maybe not pure solo content, but even with raids, if raids was a fixed difficulty, you could carry people who are at a lower level, or you could find a use for people who are at a lower level. It's going to be very difficult to make a team-based endgame piece of content because it would require your team to be at that end stage. So you'd have to have, a group of people who are maxed to do this content. With solo content that's endgame, you can do it by yourself. So instead of having to get 3 or 4 people who are maxed, you just go by yourself, and it gives you a goal rather than a team a goal. And when you give a team a goal in a game like RuneScape, it really slows things down, because if one person loses interest, you have to find someone else to fill that spot. And it kind of further separates the elite from the normal players, where a solo piece of content like the Inferno doesn't. Yeah, it's nice to have the cape, but that's not required, and you don't have to rely on anyone else, compared to if raids were a fixed difficulty. A lower level who could possibly do it will never get in, and if you are in a group with higher levels and someone drops out, you need to fill that spot with someone who's equal. So having a solo piece of content like the Inferno, all those variables aren't there. So it gives an individual, a goal to go for and just something to work towards, rather than having to work towards that while also relying on other people. And so I think content like this will, greatly help people stay interested, just in terms of giving them goals to shoot for, and it really gives a meaning to higher levels of combat. And, I don't know what's planned for the future, but possibly higher levels of skills gives them a reason to get that high level, rather than just making other content easier. I mean, higher levels will make raids easier, but it's not required. Higher levels are required for the Inferno, so it makes it a goal to shoot for, and you can't really half-ass it, because you need those levels. It's literally required to even progress. So I think that's really interesting, and it'll be really interesting to see if they continue with this trend in terms of endgame content. Now, I don't think all of their content should be geared towards that max level, but I mean, they're going to need to make more and more of this end game content as people get to that level, and it will be interesting to see what direction they take. Future updates like that. But that is all I got for this video. I know it was a little sporadic and all over the place, but I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out there, kind of introduce a possible new line of videos that I'm doing that are geared towards that, but I'm not going to make any promises, because we all know that I'm terrible at promises. That is all I have for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will see you next time.